per what the state defines. We have now 3 schools that are identified as good standing, but we're not stopping there. Now we're taking those 3 schools and we're saying, what's it take to be a National Blue Ribbon School of Excellence? Let's get there. Let's raise the bar for even where our most successful areas are, because we know growth knows no limit. So that's the good news, and to kind of wrap that all up into our key pillars in our district plan, the community and networking and partnership has never been stronger through the Community Schools Initiative. Our 5 community schools have had incredible success in just establishing really firm relations and resources with what is just a bevy of network partners in our own community. And with Dr. Cotto and his IEE division, those partnerships only continue to grow, and we still continue to unlock, whether it's intentional, sometimes it's unintentional. It just happens being in the same space, and one kind of conversation and realization connects to another, and suddenly we've got volunteers in the building. So those are going really well at the elementary level. What's new have been a hit. Our parent liaisons from our community, for our community, and for our kids. Those positions have been amazing. Engaging kids and families from a personal, I live where you live, I'm a parent, I have this piece. Now that there's that employee side too. So that balance, it's strategic, it's necessary, it adds a layer of comfort from the school side and the family side. And we continue to look to elevate those positions wherever we can. Our security monitors, our red shirts, huge hit at the elementary level. Yes, they help keep buildings safe, but more importantly, they're relationship hubs. That's the entry point they have with our kids. And under Jeff Russo's guidance, the professional development has embedded, has been ongoing, and continues to be, and it's about relationships first. And our youngest kids, our babies, see them as hubs of friendship, of listening ears, and of guidance around making the best choice on top of, you know what, I need somebody to talk to. That person's a friend. Been a huge hit. When we get into special areas, we know historically we have had music, we've had phys ed, we've had art. Library has been there too. But now adding that STEAM element, that STEAM specialist to that library has really rounded out the offerings of those 4 special areas and has made library much more than a place to take out books. It's been a place to really broaden the scope around what the library means and what it encompasses in as far as learning in totality across all of our core subject areas. And we're going to loop in science and social studies as well. So it's kind of shifted that hub to be more just a place beyond books and just that kind of global learning feeling with the specialists that we've added. Our second step, social emotional learning curriculum, was introduced to our pre-K learners and has been an instant hit. From basic processing basic feelings to how to be a friend, happening at our earliest levels with our 4 and 5-year-olds. And it's been just a huge hit. Specifically to instructional data, you've seen some presentations previously, but our iReady data is trending upward across the board at the elementary schools. It's been wonderful to see the growth between 3 different assessments at 3 points this year. What are some things that are happening still? Well, our multi-tiered systems of support, otherwise formerly known as RTI, those tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, really strategic supports. We continue to make gains academically, but also behaviorally, and how we approach discipline and identifying the commonality that tier 1, that entry-level response, is the most important level we can engage in. And teaching and learning around restorative practice, ways to engage, and then elevating it from a progressive discipline standpoint, but also wrapping our arms around kids when we know they just need that hug, or they just need that listening ear. So the MTSS process applies to the academic and the PBIS behavioral side as well. So that continues to gain and grow. One of the things that I've been working on most of this year is, and we're going to do it. We're going to extend the student day. We know the day is long, but we can't get enough minutes for our kids. So beginning next year, we will expand the student elementary day to align with the faculty and staff day. So students will begin instruction at 7:45 a.m. and we'll go to 2:40 p.m. And we're able to do that by adding, I mentioned before, electives, library, STEAM, art, music, and phys ed. We're going to add a 5th elective, and we're going to call it the Common Branch Elective Teaching Special Area. And it's going to be a common branch teacher. What we do as a classroom teacher, meeting with every class in the same manner that a phys ed teacher, a librarian, and art teacher does. And that will add the depth we need from an FTE staffing standpoint to expand the day, meet our contractual obligations and all those things that are necessary to offer 30 minutes of additional time to our children. Our principals are working on scheduling now, engaging in templates to make sure we have common planning time for our teachers and the most efficient and strategic placement of these additional resources. So it's not just putting another body, it's making these minutes matter in a very intentional, planful approach ahead of September. And that's happening now. So that is in progress and that continues to be a hit, as well as, and you'll hear from Dr. Chisholm a little later in this presentation, the prioritization of classroom walkthroughs, inspecting what we expect, and all around what the priority is for our children, and that is instruction, that is teaching and learning. So that will happen kind of in compilation with the extended day, the added fifth elective, and then lastly, in trying to get this day extended and in hiring, I've been able to meet with several new candidates. We have onboarded 27 common branch teachers since May 20th. And I've got 10 more I'm interviewing this week. And every one tells me, I want to come to Schenectady. And I just think it's important to hear this. The story is changing. They're choosing us over suburban districts. They're choosing us because they hear the stories. They hear the passionate people that come in front of our kids. They hear and see what you heard from our Page Bandits. It's happening everywhere, and it's changing the narrative, and I could not be more proud. And I know, I'm offering employment, so yeah, let me tell you what, I think you want to hear, but it's sincere. It is sincere. They're turning down jobs to come to Schenectady because they want to be part of our rising. And that's happening with regularity. So that will be the kind of culmination to what I see obviously helps Schenectady rise, but helps us change the day for our earliest learners. So that's our elementary school update. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to the esteemed, I like to think of it as a doctor, but this is my guy. This is Executive Director of Secondary Schools. This is Tyrone over here, everybody. Tyrone.
I told my colleagues, Dr. Chisholm, I do identify the doctor's work, even though I'm not on 2023. Okay, I do identify.
You had to put the work in.
Honorary, you got an honorary. Honorary. But thank you guys for allowing us to present this evening. It works there, bud. All right? And let me just give you a brief update on secondary, middle schools, and high school. So the first bullet states 90% or more students assessed on state math and ELA assessments, then full implementation of ELA and math diagnostics. I read an intro. So some people said, why is that? So what else, right? But I look at this as the following. A lot of you guys mentioned we're coming off the pandemic. Some people it still exists, it's still full blown, but we know that we're moving further and further away from it. And being in the buildings, even at the district level, we realize the gaps that students have. And the only way to identify those gaps is by testing students. They don't like it, it's taxing on buildings, it's taxing on resources, but I think Jamaica said it best. The only way we can give our access and opportunity to students is to identify what they need. I didn't say it's a deficit, what do they need to move forward? And that's the only way. And so as we get better at it, I'm going to say testing, as we get better at it, we could be more prescriptive with the interventions we get to students, because they're all different. And just as they get older, for example, it's hard to build skill the older they get. When this high school is really focused around content, not skill. That's why they take algebra, they take this science, they take that social studies, all about content. So if we're able to identify those skills at a younger age, we're better, because when it gets in high school, we all know it's about credit accumulation and content accumulation, because that's how you pass the REAPS exam. Also, we have increase in our MBK programs at the middle level. Talked to Dr. Cota, we have 50 to 75 middle level students. And it really, once again, it's all about access and opportunity, role models. People look like them, sound like them, it's open to everyone. But as that number grows, continues, imagine if we had 300 students. Now they said, wait a second, this is what it means to be MBK, this is what it means to be Mr. O'Mealy, Dr. Cotto, and so just proud of that program direction we're going. What's new? The ID system implementation in all buildings. So an important component of middle level, high school level, any classroom management for those people who's been in a building is routines. And IDs are just routines for students. Obviously, they play a role around safety. However, if we get students, I don't want to use the word trained, just say, listen, these are the important components in ID, and we talked about this at the last particular board meeting. It's just when still at a younger age, once you get to high school, it just becomes routine, and it's one less thing buildings have to worry about. When we know your child scans in, we know who they are, we know they're here, and think about this, we talked about, Priscilla, you talked about chronic absenteeism, that's our first gate, who's not in the building. We just got awarded, I think in April, the New York Bureau grant. So it's a 7-year grant that follows the class of 2028, that's our current 7th graders, and we talk about this access and opportunity. All it says is, here's this group, we have about 700 in the cohort, that's the only group that gets access to these particular funds, right? And what do we do? We expose them to college, we'll pay for it, we'll expose them to mentors, we'll give them summer camp, all those pieces we know that produces successful students, right? And so why not the other grade levels? They just want to focus on see what the outcomes. And it's for 7 years. Okay, so what happens, so wait a second, they're in 7th grade, what happens the other 2 years? We follow them. We track their success, that's the whole purpose, all right? And in progress at the middle level, there's this idea that students who take algebra, living environment, studio, art, or foreign language are accelerated. No, they're not, because in high school, those are normal courses. So the issue is, and Superintendent Sawyer says this all the time, a student's on track if they get at least 5 credits in their freshman year, then we know they're on track to graduation. I hate that's the mark we use, but we have to. So imagine if we build a system within the middle level where every student are able to start earning high school credits, and now that creates just space for choice at the high school. Because now you've kind of established your path, you got the basic requisitions out of the way, and now you said, you know what, I know that they're doing these leadership communities at high school, I really like STEM, I like humanities, I want to be able to have more choice. But you're stifled with your choice at the high school level if you fail a course, you have to retake it. Now your choice gets diminished, because really now you're just, instead of trying to go after choice, you're trying to go after that 22 credits that you have to do for high school. So I think the better we get at, I'll say this, educating our students in the middle level, the more choice they'll have in high school. And finally, ongoing hiring and vacancies. We all know math and science are tough to fill. I think I got to give a shout out to Teaching and Learning. Their staff have done an excellent job hiring our secondary staff, and I think the hardest piece to fill right now, math and science, but I believe right now we may only be short like 1 or 2 math teachers. For science, it may be the same, so we're aggressively out there recruiting staff. So the high school, and Mr. Green's in the building, so any questions go to him directly. All right, so what went well at the high school? I think Mr. DiCaprio mentioned this earlier. So the high school was formerly a TSI school, Targeted Supports and Intervention, and now they call it a LAS school, Local Assistance Plan. And so now that's formerly known as School in Good Standing, and the high school did. All right, so during the pandemic, they did it. How did they do it? It's a combination of graduation rate, your assessment scores, but I believe what put us over the top was IIB students and their performance on those exams. So I have to say this with caution. As easily as you get it, you can lose it if you keep your eye away from the prize. So every 2 years you get assessed on that. And it doesn't mean nothing about the school, but it is, when you're identified as a school, there's a burden that comes along with accountability. And when you're accountable for certain things, then you lose choice once again. And so that's why it's not dangerous tagging, because financial resources come along with being identified. However, there's certain restraints. I got to give Mr. Green a lot of credit for this. Improved climate and culture. We saw reduced suspensions, decreased chronic absenteeism, and increased average daily attendance. I said this when we first presented. Those numbers get better because the kids want to be there. Right? I'm not going to do this, and it starts at the top with Mr. Green. Does he represent what the school, the students see as a leader? Is he there for me? Not that he's the principal. When I walk by Mr. Green, am I Mr. Green the principal? Or that's just Mr. Green. And I think that's what he means to that community. You can see it in the numbers. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But I've seen over the course of the year, and I've been there with the shifts that have been in the high school, and some of you guys walk the hallways, you see it, right? Do we have to get better in every single indicator? Yes, because we have to. However, you can see and feel it in there. And I can see it by the support of the staff. Also, what went well, I'd like to give a special shout out to Mr. Chang. And the first full year of Burley College at SEC and Proctor's, once again, I keep using this word over and over again, it's choice. That's what we're creating for our students. So those students, the first year of 9th and 10th grade are down at that. 9th grade this year, next year 10th grade. I think somebody's child is going down there. I don't know who it is. I'm not blowing up people's spot, right? But it is, I think, and I'm going to talk about this, and I'll give Superintendent Sawyer credit for this, because when he sees secondary, that's his realm, and he's like, I want to do this, this, and this. I'm like, oh my goodness, right? But at the same time, what he's saying is if you give students choice, they're going to be successful. If you give them the same model, what are they going to do? I don't want to do this. And so now, next year, you have a combination of big picture, which is 72 students. You have cities or campus, which is going to be about 135, 140 students, and just keep multiplying those students year after year and after year. And then when we phase the freshman academy in, now we have a smaller high school for that student says, you know what, I really love coming here because there's not 2,700 students. And so that's what we're trying to do. So when we look at what's new in the high school, we're just getting better at what we do. And how we do that by giving students choice. But then we go back to what I said earlier. It starts in middle school. Actually, let's peel it back. It starts in elementary school. If we can build those skills, now when the students get in there, okay, 6th grade, I'll take my 6th grade ELA, math, science, social studies. No, by 8th grade, no, everyone's taking living environment. Everybody's taking algebra. So by the time they get their sophomore years or their freshman year in high school, I think I want to do STEAM, and I want to do all these courses. By the time I'm a senior, I'm going to do my internship. Let's see, where are we? So what's new at the high school? I talked about big picture, semestering of freshman courses, and this is an idea. It's simply put, what if we had, just like your college semester, you take your algebra, you take your foreign language, world language, Mr. Green corrected me, your world language, right? Right? Your world language, your studio art in the first semester, and typically, and I didn't see this, but this was superintendent's work. Typically, we don't know how students progress till the end of the year. Some electives are half-year courses, but in those major content areas, you don't know how they're doing, especially in the urban environment. So if you have a skill deficit in middle school, it's not disappearing. It's going to come to you to high school. So we have to have a good gauge where those students are at. So by the end of the first semester, okay, we know we have a cohort of 700 freshmen. How many passed the algebra? All right, so we have a 40%, 50% pass rate. Now what can we do in the second semester? That's different. So is it courageous? 100%. But at the same time, if we don't do something different, then what are we really doing? And in progress, phase 2 of secondary redesign, I think this is really, really, thank you guys for your support on passing the capital project. I thank the community for it because really, now this is really giving our students choice. The work that's going to be done on SCLA, the work that's going to be done in Central Park, if that needs it, the work that's going to be done at the high school that drastically needs it. I don't know if you guys have seen the bathrooms up there, the locker rooms, the classrooms, and so the first thing I always look I remember when I first started, the first thing you walk into is the cafeteria. What does it look like? And if you're a student and you look at the floor, oh, if you walk in the bathroom, that's my bathroom? Really? And so all these things I'm excited about what it's going to bring, because the minute they walk in, we talk about climate and culture, that's part of it. I'm going to treat it how it looks. I'm going to treat it how it looks. So I'm really, really excited about that. So, and then STLA, we have 1 more year phasing that building out so we can shut it down, make the improvements, and really put 700 students in the following, by 25, I got to look at the time, 25, 26, I think that's our target. And once again, the high school, I think back to Dr. Chisholm's team of just staffing that building, I think we're doing a phenomenal job. Compared to where we were last year, we're in a really good place. All right? And that's what I have for the secondary. Thank you guys, all right? And now I'm going to pass it on to Jeff Russo.
I'm no doctor. Thank you, Tyler. So I didn't print my slides out, so I'll have to go by the screen. Thanks for having me tonight, board. Quick recap on safety. I know we had a long safety presentation before. My voice is not great today, so I'm going to keep it real brief. What went well this year? We definitely reestablished our district-wide safety committees. We have our safety plans in place. You'll be getting the district safety plan soon. Next month, we'll go up for public comment, so expect that at the next board meeting. We have brought back the safety team meetings within the buildings as well as the district safety team. The district safety team members, I think the red shirts, they've got a lot of notoriety this year at the award ceremony with HR today. Wonderful ceremony. 2 of them were recognized for what their contributions to the building, and every time I hear about Miss Savage, or Roz over in Howe, or Miss Ford over in Kane, every time I hear a name, everybody says, don't ever take that person away from us. And I feel like I can't recognize enough the people that have come in, and to kind of echo what Joel said about his interviews. I interviewed about 10 people in the last day and a half, a couple from outside the agency. And the ones from outside the agency said that they're here, they're from Schenectady, and it's all great stuff that they've been hearing, and that's why they want to come here. So I 100%, he's not lying when he says that people are choosing to come here at this point because they hear the good things are happening. The student ID system, Tyrone touched on, you know, it's just, again, when we look at colleges, when we look at other options in the workforce, when we look at a lot of places, the ID is a standard thing. It's just a matter of safety and getting kids in the habit of being able to be responsible. When it comes to, let's see, we created the Incident Command Center. We've given everybody a tool to use that they can make a phone call. They no longer have to do the legwork on investigating an incident or anything. We do it for them. Everything is done for them, and it saves all kinds of time for administrators. I think they would all be happy to second that. I think when it comes to our Raptor management system, it was broken and not working a couple of years ago, and now it's all up and running in every building. Every visitor that you see in a building has a sticker on. You know, when it comes to safety, the basics were this. We went around all the buildings, we changed all the locks. We changed all the access control. We updated all the cameras. We made it so that we function like any other suburban school functions, and we have all the technology we need. I have to give kudos to the superintendent for not saying no to any recommendation I've made, because to be honest with you, we have a lot of catching up to do, and a lot has happened in the last year and a half. We still have a lot of work to do, but a lot has happened. And when I see this, like, this to me is why you have safety, because when kids feel comfortable, they're free to do this. When kids feel like they belong, you know, that's the time that they learn, and that's the time that they grow. And I've always stuck from day one in my interview with the district to Maslow's hierarchy. And when the kids feel safe, that's when everything else can take off from there. So, you know, again, I can't thank the board enough and the superintendent enough for supporting what my vision was for getting the buildings just to feel more comfortable and allowing some of these things to happen. The synergy of the efforts, safety security has been working, especially with parent liaisons, other groups, to come together as a team. We have some work to do in some buildings, but the places where it's taken off, it's really taken off. You know, kudos to Dr. Cotto and his team. Again, we've shared PD. We did an entire PD day together with safety team members and parent liaisons, and we're trying to make it so that the teams in every building can function the same way, make the parents feel welcome all the time, make the kids feel safe all the time. I was at the PV graduation, moving up this morning from 5th grade, and I can tell you, it was a packed house, and every single time somebody asked me, where's this, where's that, I would have to just turn around and say, go ask that red shirt over there. I didn't know what anything was, but I know that everybody identified with them, and they knew the answer to every question. So, I mean, it's really, it couldn't have gone better than, you know, what it's done this year. As far as what's yet to come, we're still continuing to build a radio system. Again, we started by securing everything. Now we build communication systems. We hire the right people to connect with our kids, mentor our kids. Everybody I hired in as a safety team member, I told them, look, if 10 kids connect with you, that's, you know, 10 times 70. That's 700 kids that have a solid connection with an adult in the building. And we all know that some adult connection is what it takes for a kid to be successful. Enhanced communication system across all the district. Full integration and automation of building safety systems. We're still working out the kinks with it right now. Every building has been brought up with safety buttons, lockdown buttons. We're working on, we've brought all our drills up to compliance, something that wasn't happening in the years prior. So, you know, every building has all the technology it needs to be a safe environment. We're gonna keep pushing forward to get them where they belong all the time, and that way the kids can just be free to take off and learn and grow. And really, that's it for the safety update at this point. Thank you. I'm gonna turn it over to, can I just pick anyone?
On the slide then.
All right, okay. Slide, please.
We've got the controls ready.
All right.
Hit the button, it works now.
Not a
There
doctor.
you go.
Professional learning. I'll assume that's Dr. Chisholm. Thank
One
you.
with the real doctor.
The real doctor.
Good evening. I'm not gonna read off of the slide because everything is not there. But one of the things that we created this year in teaching and learning was pretty much a nice spreadsheet, and it's aligned to our professional development plan to make sure that we hit all of those 13 goals that are outlined in that professional development plan. And we've done that, and we have exceeded that. At the end of the year, I'll go and do a data report around how many sessions, how many people, et cetera, but we're still offering PD, and we will continue to be offering PD with our summer institute in August, over a course of 3 days. So we've had over 1,000 summer PD enrollments. This year, we've got new teacher orientation, iReady, which you'll hear from a little bit, Wit and Wisdom, rolling that out in the individual guided observations throughout each building. The added glasses are still being created. So that's still part of our 5-year academic curriculum review process. And again, we're looking at 2 to 3 content areas and rotating that through every 5 years. So in August, we'll be looking at everything that was done for this year, uploading that so that teachers, especially our new teachers, have access to the curriculum and the at a glance so that they come in prepared, confident, knowing what it is they're going to be instructing our students in for the upcoming school year. Lots of things around MTSS. I'm trying to skip some things here, but that came out from Erica and Dr. DeVries this year, that joint collaboration between teaching and learning and student support services, again, that wraparound piece where we're looking at academic behavior and the social emotional piece. I'm trying to think of everything that's on there. Avid, we've sent a group of teachers, teacher leaders, administrators, and actually this summer, there's a group of us that'll be taking the bus to learn more about Avid as we expand the program beyond the high school into the middle school, and what does that look like in terms of that culture and climate and those shared expectations for learning, teaching and learning in those schools. District-wide safety meetings, all those wonderful things. So, and then Dr. Koto's work with tangible development. So these are all things across the board that have supported not just instructional leaders, but teachers, administrators, paraprofessionals, tons of staff members throughout the district where everybody needs, where everybody counts and everybody learns. So that's where we are in terms of professional development highlights, and we still have a lot more work to do because we're always growing and learning. So going to the next slide. I know Tyrone and Joe mentioned already in a couple of slides. I want to bring up a wonderful partner with us. Her name is Alicia Crack, and she is our partner with iReady. When I tell you it's important to develop these strong working relationships and these partnerships, there are times when we're on the phone together on weekends, late evenings. Her sidekick, Libby, is missing, but Libby is one of the folks that works with the data analyst. And when I tell you me and Libby are like this around that data and what it means and what it looks like and our next steps, this is why we're so connected with evening calls and things like that around this work. But I wanted her to kind of share how our first year of implementation worked here in Schenectady.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. Thank you for inviting me today. She is correct. I have a large group of partners that we partner together with Schenectady. And first and foremost, I want to say thank you. Thank you for all the hard work you guys have done and obviously continue to push down to the superintendent, to all the teachers and staff. You're doing amazing work, and we see that across many counties. I have 27 counties. So you're one that is looked at highly. So thank you. Our partnership with you I actually just came over in January. I have the Central Region, and so I'm excited to be part of this. But you have increased your participation rates from fall to spring. Your students, due to the protocols and procedures that the district has put in place, you were able to increase reading. Now your diagnostic closed today, so we don't have any data yet, but Libby will be getting that and you'll have a full meeting on that one. But reading increased by 3% just for the diagnostic, and math, I'm going to say 7 because it really was. I mean, you're at 6.9. Throughout the year, we worked hard to make sure that the teachers and administration and coaches were all supported. You had several group PD sessions. I actually was able to go and visit many of the schools for the PD sessions in March. And the questions that the teachers were asking and the coaches were amazing. And so those are stemmed and tailored to what the schools need. So each school might be a little bit different. You also had leadership consultancy. You have a PD specialist assigned to Schenectady. So Karen is assigned to your district, and everybody knows Karen very well. And so you also added personalized instruction, and the personalized instruction is stemmed from the diagnostic. So this is a pathway for the students, and it's personalized for those students and individual for that student. So this is something that they have worked on, and the success for this was a large participation within the whole district, and we'll continue to see this next year. What's new, we will continue to add that PD to make sure that this implementation is supported, and again, tailor this to the needs of the district, but also supporting in your MTSS model, as they discussed, and how are we gonna stem that data, continuing to layer their understanding of the data and stemming that instruction from there. We will continue to grow that personalized learning path, because as a company, nationally, we see that if those students are on and the teachers are really looking at that data, it is really starting to see them to grow that stretch growth, which is either accelerating them if they're at grade level or getting them towards grade level if there's a deficiency. And do you want me to keep going, or do you want to do the, okay, perfect. All right, so as we just said, we'll continue to make sure that we tailor the PD, and we're gonna make sure that we continue to support you in any way. Rule of thumb is, if you have any questions and you're looking for something within 15 minutes, stop looking and call us, because we're here to support you in any way we can.
Thank you. And I just want to thank Alicia for driving out here and joining us this evening. It's always great to put a face to the name, and to hear about the things that we're implementing and how that is supporting our students and growing them at the same time. So we thank you.
Thank you. Board members?
Thank you, Dr. Chisholm. Amazing as always. Doctor, at this point, that concludes our end of the year presentation. We'll open up to any questions you may have for us.
Board members, any questions?
I don't have a question, it was really good to hear everything that's been going on, and the fact that people want to come to our district. Right, that's
Gotcha.
exciting.
Yeah.
That's very exciting,
True.
so
Yeah.
thank you for everybody's hard work and dedication, effort. It's amazing. I'm just really happy to hear about it.
Our pleasure and our honor. All right.
I have
Thank you very much for the.
questions.
Go ahead, Bernice. We're listening.
I will only ask three. Only ask
We'll
three,
email the rest.
yes,
Okay.
and a comment.
Yes.
So when you mentioned, this is Mr. DiCaprio, when you mentioned the 3 elementary schools that are identified as in good standing, I'm wondering, do we have specifics, and I know there are nuances between each elementary school, there are many differences, but I'm wondering, have we captured what's working well, what they're doing, and how can that possibly be translated or differentiated in other schools?
We have, and
Okay.
we've identified it through our principals meetings.
Okay.
And we have 2 series of principals meetings. One is a collective formally in this room,
Mhm.
and then the even more powerful ones are the smaller bi-weekly check-ins that I have with the 11. And the conversation is rich, it's honest, and it's strategic around what's working, what's not. The group of 11 elementary leaders we have are incredible about sharing best practice. So no one's keeping anything inside their walls. If it works, they share it. And part of why the common branch hiring is so successful is because everybody's so used to talking to each other around the instruction, it's leading to a very common understanding of what the best teaching looks like consistently across all 11 buildings. So it relates to the strategies as well. Our set plans they're going to be engaged in as a collective this summer. So everybody's in the same room. So you'll hear the strategies that are working at the schools that are done in good standing with the schools that aren't. And to those that aren't, there's good things happening there too. It affects the schools in good standing. So yes, the answer is it's absolutely being shared.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Then, I'm choosing which one I'm at. When you mentioned walkthroughs, I think it was Mr. O'Malley, right? The walkthroughs at the high school, was it you, or I can't remember? The classroom walkthroughs. Or Dr.
I
Chisholm,
think-
sorry.
It was elementary.
Yeah, so, elementary. So I have a wonder with that, because I know in a lot of other school districts, there have been concerns with walkthroughs in terms of people come in, the teacher doesn't know what they're looking for. I'm just wondering if it's going to be a little bit structured, like this walkthrough is going to be looking at classroom environment. The next walkthrough may be looking at, we use Danielson or NICET, we use
NICET, we
NICET.
use
So
NICET.
let's say we're looking at standard 2, instruction, I believe. So I'm wondering, okay, I see the, so, okay,
I'm with you.
okay.
So, actually this year, we rolled out a classroom visitation tool, so it doesn't sound as,
Evaluation.
right, evaluative, and it is non-evaluative. It's supposed to give that quick glimpse of what happens every day in every classroom across the building, not the 3 times a year piece, right? So there are specific components to it. There are 2. There's one for literacy that can be used in social studies, science, social studies, science, and English. And then there's a math tool specifically for mathematics. Avahowever, we did just partner with Education Walkthrough. So it's going to be out of a Google form and now in a platform where it'll turn the data for us and look at it by school, by specific component. One of the things that we are working on right now currently is this walkthrough kind of calendar of specific look for us. So it'll align to the components of the APPR that teachers are evaluated on with the NYSERD, as well as marrying that with certain components of the walkthrough tool. And what we're doing is looking at specific components for 22 days for quarter 1. And that is a vision that we're moving forward with, that we're all going to be looking at that same piece, so we can norm what that looks like in our buildings. And then the next cycle will be some different components of that. And the big piece around that would be norming what it looks like, the expectation, that inspecting what we expect, and the quality of feedback that is given to that teacher right away, so that they can improve their craft. So that is something that we're working on that needs to be.
And PGAP is part of all this, correct?
PCAP is not a part of that work just yet, but they are a part of looking at lesson plan templates, and Mike, or,
I thought it was the evaluation tool.
right, the evaluation tool and
No,
the
I'm sorry, the walkthrough tool. I
the
thought that's what-
walkthrough tool, as well as the lesson plan templates we were looking at. So what I was teasing the superintendent with today is that usually they say Y2K, but we're looking at it as Y2Y, definitely that year of instruction, that's so what now what piece.
Thank you, thank you. And then, just to keep with our
Third
protocol,
question.
I do want to mention something to Jeff Russo. It's not a question, it's a comment. I have, and I know many board members have witnessed the work that the parent liaisons have done and the security monitors, but I'm going to focus right now because I only have one thing I could say. So the parent liaisons, I just really want people to understand, like, they go beyond. I went to Price Chopper after a meeting, it was around 7 o'clock at night, and the parent liaisons, and it was actually Miss Savage and Christine. Dr. Cota, sorry, I'm sorry, Dr. Cota, yes, I'm sorry, and Dr. Cota, because I was gonna talk about the security monitors too, but, they were at Price Chopper, and they were shopping. I thought they were shopping for themselves, but then the next day, and this goes to some of the events, and I didn't mention the events, all the events that I went to, but MLK had a 5th grade prom, which was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And Miss Savage, Christine, Matt, there were several, Carlos, they all, it was just beautiful. You saw it, right? It was just absolutely, it was beautiful. But again, I just want to stress the fact that, and it's not just the parent liaisons, but I know many board members mentioned the teachers as well, you know, administrators as well. But the parent liaisons have been very powerful. I've seen how many of them have interacted with parents, how the parents have come to the parent liaisons, how the students run to them at the prom. I mean, they love Christine. I mean, I can go on and on. So I do want to say that because I don't think people realize they're not done at 3-something. I saw them at 7-something, and they were smiling. Oh my goodness. And I didn't realize anything to tell me that that's what they were doing. And then when I saw them the next day, I'm like, is that what you were at, Price Chopper? They're like, yeah. So thank you. But also, Mr. Russo, it is security monitors too. Amazing. I mean, you took my word. Amazing. Amazing. Again, the connections that they have been making, I see so many of them, in different athletic events or events in general, and I know some of them are not actually working, they're there because they're supporting the students. Again, these are things that our district is doing that people may not realize and see. It's amazing. And the board messes with me about the word amazing, but I mean, so I want to thank you for everything you do, and I just wanted to add to what the board said, but again, specifically to the parent liaisons and community the security monitors, and I do have other questions, but I will pause. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Wait,
you.
Oh, wait,
No,
Priscilla.
go ahead, Priscilla.
I just like that we ended the year with what went well.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
it's a nice highlight of all the things that you guys do, and we appreciate so much. So thank you for that. And I do want to note the importance of the librarian.
Yes.
It gives me crazy time to everything in, that you put an important role on that position, so.
So much
thanks for
value.
that. Yes.
And we love your energy when you present.
Yes.
Oh, and I gotta keep up with TV.
It's those sour patches.
All right, thank you very much, we appreciate the time.
Thank you.
One more question.
I noticed on the bottom of your notes, where the Summer Institute, August 8th to 10th at Niskuna. Now, what are we doing there?
So what's gonna happen there is like 3 days of, 3 days of concurrent workshops and sessions for professional development for teachers. We have things from SciOp for mathematics K through 5, so that's the shelter instruction, which targets instruction for our ENL students. So those teachers will be taking that for mathematics K through 5. We're doing more curriculum writing. We have culture responsive teaching and pedagogy, lesson planning and development, 2-part sessions for that. So we have a lot of vendors coming in. We have more work around grading for equity, so we just have like a smorgasbord of events and partnership also with student support services and some things that they're going to be providing for their staff as well. We did open it up to some of the teachers at Niskuna. We also believe in sharing in best practices and having conversations with colleagues that may not always be in our district. So these are great things that are going to be happening, and you are welcome to come by and visit us.
So you will be sharing with the Niskuna teachers there?
Yes, there will be some availability, but they won't be taking all of the slots. So we have offered some of the spaces for them as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the presentation. Next, we will have a presentation by Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, Andrea Toth, on the Code of Conduct. Greetings to you. Welcome.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. I know we don't always do a presentation on the code of character, but I wanted to just do a brief overview tonight, really around one of our goals, which was to decrease student suspension, and kind of how that ties into the code of character and its development. Okay, so we start with a review of our district vision tagline and values, followed by our strategic planning pillars.
I think you're hitting another button down
Yeah,
here.
I think so too. Okay.
That heavy wedding ring is keeping you down.
Okay, so, we're gonna go past our pillars, because obviously, I don't know what this arrow is happening here.
You got it?
He gave me the look, don't touch it. All right. We gotta go back a slide, we're ahead of ourselves. Okay, all right, let's start here. So, as you know, we have a district comprehensive improvement plan, or DSIP. And one of the goals in that DSIP is to reduce district-wide suspension by 5%, with also a reduction to relative risk ratio of suspension among Black students with disabilities, with a goal of being at 1.0, which would mean we'd be proportionate. Over on the right side of the slide, you'll see in 2021-22, end of last year, we ended with an 18% suspension rate district-wide. 22-23 is where we are landing at the end of this year, so 14.8. We aren't going to quite make our 5% that we aim to, but we have made some good progress in the right direction. As for the relative risk, we are trending a little bit in the wrong direction, so that's something we're going to be monitoring very closely and continuing to work on our strategies to get that going back towards the 1.0. Some of the strategies I wanted to talk about tonight include the editing of the Code of Character, Conduct, and Support, which you all have a copy in front of you. a bit of redesigning of the long-term suspension program for next year, and then our continued building upon our capacity and restorative practices and social emotional learning. I do want to start by thanking our Code of Character, Conduct, and Support Committee. These are the folks that have been working with me since January, meeting regularly, and really working to inform the edits of the Code of Character. I also want to thank several of the board members who took a lot of time to really go through and give us some really explicit edits and feedback. That was really, really helpful, so thank you for doing that. If you go to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about the role of the committee. So some of the things that the committee members engaged in from January until recently were around eliciting feedback. So stakeholder feedback by way of survey for students, families, staff members. We also had some forums, like for example, our senior parent liaisons did some parent forums around specific to the reentry process after suspension. We also had the pleasure of working with the superintendent's student advisory council and getting great feedback from them. And so we try to make sure that the folks who are on our committee have branches that extend out into all of those areas. And so we also took time to review data throughout the year. We had articles and had some good discussions around the direction that we want to be going in. And all of those things kind of informed our edits to the 23-24 version, which you have in front of you. We are going to ask the board tonight to open the public comment period for 30 days, which would go up tomorrow morning. We'll have a Let's Talk online, and the code will be up there, and so people can get on there and give additional feedback for the next 30 days. It would close July 21st, and then we would come back and have another follow-up conversation with you all to talk about whether it's just some minor tweaks that need to be made, or if there's anything major that has come out, and then ask you to consider adopting on August 2nd. Next slide. I am going to get my notes for this one. I do want to talk a little bit about another strategy that we are sort of tackling is a bit of a redesign of the long-term suspension program. And so I mentioned this at our last time I presented to you all around the Judge Judith S.K. Solutions Not Suspensions Bill, and that may or may not be legislation that passes later in the year, and it aims to reduce negative outcomes for students due to suspension. There is a link in the PowerPoint that you guys can click on, and we're a bit more of the specifics around it. And I will say that we found a lot of the things in the legislation, our Code of Character already aligns to some of those things that would be in the legislation. For example, the bill calls for limitations of suspensions in grades K through 3. And in our Code of Character, we already have some limitations in grades pre-K through 2. So you'll see in this next version of the code that we've expanded that to pre-K 3. The investment the board has made to add school counselors in the elementary school will also help us with those interventions that students need at that level. And then another area in the bill is it shortens the maximum amount of suspension from 180 days to 20 days, except for obviously when required by federal law. And so one of the things that Mr. O'Mealy and I have been working on is we've been meeting with secondary principals to talk about redefining our suspension guidelines. And so these guidelines they consist of typical suspension ranges for particular Code of Character violations. And it's really something that we use to ensure that there's a level of consistency across the district and across the system. So we've been talking with them about rethinking those ranges and shifting some of them to better align with the proposed legislation, and also to do, in an effort to do what's best for children. Currently, students on long-term suspension report to Washington Irving for 3 hours a day of tutoring and to access student supports. We've also been working with secondary principals to develop their own program in their own buildings. And so when students receive a suspension of 20 days or less, they would be able to serve that in the program within the building that they already go to. And we feel that that would better allow them to have better proximity and continued connection to their own teachers and support staff. So, if students engage in some more serious code of character violations, which might yield to a longer suspension, they would still serve it at Washington Irving where the diversion team is located, and they could get more intensive therapeutic interventions. But all the programs, even the ones in the middle school and high school, will have diversion services attached to them and student support services as well. In fact, one of our diversion clinicians, the plan for the fall is for her to be out and kind of pushing into those sites and being able to partner with the student support staff in those buildings so that we can offer a mirror of some of those interventions that are in diversion. Next slide. Another strategy is to continue growing our RP team. We had 10 RP specialists, we now have 12. A couple of buildings have found ways to fund those through some grant funding. And we are always trying to build capacity across the system. They are a great investment. People love the RP specialists. They all want their own in their own building. I get it. I think they're a really dynamic group and they're really invested in the work. So I often hear them saying, like, we're gonna offer training summer, every single break. They wanna go to training. They're going as a team together to a training in August to increase their skills. And then also in May, they came together with RJ Ed, and they did an intensive week-long training. And for one of the days, they got to work with some of the building administrators in planning their implementation plans around RP and making sure that it aligns to the MTSS work. And then we also had, I think I might have mentioned this last time too, there were about 30 members of staff who joined this training with RJ Ed for a day to create the community mediation response team, which is new. It's something that we hope to mitigate some of the conflicts that happen that sometimes end up involving family members or siblings and big things that can get out of control really quickly and have a propensity to bring violence into the school or in the school community. And being able to have this group of people be able to convene really quickly and even working outside of the school day if need be to try and mitigate that. And they're mostly made up of safety staff, parent liaisons, and RP specialists on that team. So they're really excited about it. They just finished meeting to do like a mock run and get their procedures and systems all kind of ready to go, and we'll be rolling that out in September. And the last strategy I'm going to touch on tonight is just the SEL. I know Dr. DeVries talked at length about the DESA screener, the strengths-based screener that we use, and also the second step curriculum. I heard it mentioned earlier with Joe and Tyrone. And really just being able to have that curriculum in pre-K through 8. I know that it's awesome. And I think that, just hearing Carrie White being recognized for her work around second step was really exciting for us. I think just the momentum and the fact that people are seeing the outcomes really benefiting the students. We've also got the child protection and the bullying prevention units kind of wrapped into the second step curriculum, which is really helpful. And then this summer, we've got a very large group of staff members who are traveling by bus to Harvard for the SEL Summer Institute. So we're really excited. We've got time built in within their mini teams to also do some planning for that and the work of the building. Okay, and I'll take questions.
Questions from the board?
How often do we administer the DESA? How many times a year?
Twice.
Which schools don't have historic practices specialists?
So the middle schools have their own, the high school and SCLA have some that live right in those buildings, and then the elementaries share. So some of them have 3 buildings apiece, and then Kane has one through receivership of their own, and in the fall, Page will also have one of their own.
What is relative to speed on slide there? 1.58. What does that mean?
I always come with a little definition and how it's calculated. Of course, tonight I didn't, but essentially it's the risk that you have of being suspended if you're in that group. So, 1.0 means you proportionately suspend for those groups. So if you're up around 1.5 or 1.8, you're that time's much more likely to suspend a student within that group, so.
It's the measure of the risk of a certain event happening in one group compared to the risk of it happening to the same event happening to the other group. So like, it would be black students compared to white students, so the relative risk for them is higher than it would be to happen to a white student. So that's kind of the catch back. I was waiting for Dr. Mason to jump in.
I always have it in the school
Questions, comments, concerns. Diversion support access, in the past, one of the issues we've had is not enough access for the number of students that would potentially benefit from the diversion program. This may be a long time ago relative, right? Are we in a position right now that any student who enters the diversion program is not on a waiting list for services?
Yes.
Yay! Jazz hands. Bullying prevention, I just want to make sure, and maybe I'm just saying this for the room, what we're talking about is supporting the students who need help to not become bullies, right? Give them the social, emotional skills to be able to talk about their feelings, not take it out on other people, that we are preventing a student, a child, from making poor choices that then will have a negative impact on somebody else.
Correct, and also how to be someone who's not a bystander, what to do if you're in those situations.
Awesome. And then the RP, RJ Ed, CMRT, because we know I love acronyms. What's RJ Ed?
It's a company, RJN.
Okay, great. That's not really my question. So
Like
when we're looking at, listen, you just said something earlier. You said I'm a liaison, but also the safety staff. Don't play with So if I'm understanding you correctly, though, when we're talking about restorative practices and having these community team members that are intervening with either family members or students, right? We're looking at how are we containing and controlling and working with students and families inside our buildings. 2 parts, does that also mean we're having some type of professional development for teachers to not be afraid of our students and families? And if implemented well, does this mean we're gonna stop calling the police for low-level stuff, right? Because in some spaces, there's a knee-jerk of, oh no, this parent called the police. Oh, these 2 students got in a fight, we call the police. When instead, it sounds like we're creating a system where we are going to be able to work directly with our students and families and not need to outsource for all of these other things. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, and I would say that the work with Dr. Coder's department is really crucial in this because they are building those relationships in the buildings daily. So having some of them on our team for this was really important. We do have our CEOs, our safety staff, they were trained also. So, the group will come together in an emergency kind of basis and then decide like who has relationships already with the folks in this situation. And then that whole team of 30 won't work that case. Like, we'll narrow it down. But I think the big thing is being able to do it quickly. And so having a process so that we can call an emergency meeting after school today and figure out who needs to wrap around the situation, get the pre-conferences done, reach out to families, see how we can get everybody to the table to get this issue squashed as quickly as possible, instead of drawing it out to where we're still trying to figure out who's the best person to go, 2 weeks into it, and now it's too late.
And I guess I'm also just looking for more of that in the moment, right? What does de-escalation look like for our staff, our teachers, and administrators, when there is that parent that's upset for potentially really valid reasons, right? They're mad, like, this is my kid, what's going on? And them being upset is seen as a threat of violence just because they're angry.
Yeah.
How are we empowering and giving support to administrators and staff to be able to handle those situations without fear, but just being really aware of the dynamics that are involved?
Yeah.
So that we're building the community, right? That I can talk to Jessica, she's mad because her kid's getting suspended, or
Yeah.
John called me and he's really pissed. And I can have that conversation and not be worried about it escalating. I imagine that's a problem.
Well, one thing that comes to mind also is that we are trying to tackle some work to really increase the number of people across the district who are trained in TCIS. And the de-escalation components of TCIS aren't just for students, right? It's how you interact with people, how you put empathy into what's happening, how you try to figure out like what's the root cause of the issue and not be reactive. I think that training could really help if we can get a lot. We put out something recently to see if we had more people who wanted to be trainers, and there was something like 18 people across the district who said they wanted to be trainers. So we actually might have the Cornell rep come here and do the training because it's more financially cost effective than having people go out to Cornell.
That's great. Listen, de-escalation is no easy thing. As someone that does it as part of her day job, it's hard work. It takes a level of awareness and concentration. So I'm glad that folks in our district are going to get that kind of support, because I think it's sorely needed. Thank you.
Any other board members?
I'll just say, before we close out the subject, or before the board president speaks, I think, I want to uplift a couple things. This is hard work. I don't want to schools typically have to deal with all of society's larger ills that they don't want to talk about as a whole. We have to deal with them as schools. So, I do want to uplift the work, leadership of Andrea and her team. She takes this really personal, which I love. She's, all those emails sent and the details, feedback. When she thought she was done, and she got 3 more, she's like, oh my God, but the reality is this is hard work. And what I really appreciate is, and this is where I worry about for sustainability, because right now financially we are well, right? So we're sort of, practice specialists and things like that, and we've been able to be really creative and allow some flexibility, and we've even allowed schools to have some freedom in terms of like their school improvement plans, to really use it for that. I mean, think about it, school improvement plan, they're want to purchase a restorative practice specialist, and nothing around technically instruction, to kind of go back to Jeff's point around, making sure people feel safe and supported. But I just want you to know, that's an organic team. That group, those are things coming out of that group, a community management team. That's those people. Many of them are Schenectadians. Many of them are Schenectady alumni. Know the needs of these kids in the community. They're coming up with these ideas and say, look, we really need a response to you, because when Principal Green calls me, there's like 6 other things that went off of the thing that was happening. We got to figure out how to circle up before it comes back tomorrow morning. So I really commend the group that's really kind of, no one's telling us we don't have a playbook, the state's not doing this, but our hope is that we can create models that can be protected. For me, my job is to protect it in the budget and make sure it continues and make sure we don't take it, Terry's job and I's, and figure out how we build a sustainability around this. But I do want to uplift that we are asking our principals and our teachers to have some mind shifts as well. So that legislation did not pass. If anybody was following it, they did not. I got voted down. And there are some communities who are completely against it. And, I'll say this because I said to Andy, I was like, we're gonna do it. And she was like, oh, okay. But I said we're gonna do it in the manner, because it is definitely right for kids, but it is a shift in how we approach it. It is a shift. So some of the offenses would have been more than 20 days, we've shifted with our principals. And we've heard, some of it was like, oh, I don't agree with this, or we have a couple principals in the back. They could probably tell you, they'll do it, they're good soldiers, and they will do the best for kids, and they get it. But it's sometimes hard to message that. And we're not letting kids get away with doing consequences, we're just shifting the length of a consequence, and we're shifting where the consequence occurs. So in the past, what I noticed was we would be okay with kids all going to Washington Irving and then not being a connection to the building. And what I noticed looking at the data was like, sometimes kids didn't get enough work. Sometimes kids didn't get any work. Sometimes kids finished the work they had quickly and then they didn't have access to maybe getting back to somebody in the building to help them get some work. And so to bring those kids back into the building is gonna be a shift. And I am asking my administrators to dedicate a space for these kids to have the 3 hours of instruction. So if they need work, the teacher's hopefully down the hallway and can provide it, or can put it in a mailbox for a teacher, or can go and check on the kid who they haven't seen in 5 or 10 days. And so, yeah, it is a shift. The school counselor's there. There's other supports there. So, I wanna not pass that lightly. That is a significant shift in how we work with our kids who may have done something, and they said, okay, I'm gonna do the consequence, but I'm still gonna be, connected to my school community. And hopefully I come back and I have low recidivism, and I don't go back here. But kids who get 21 or more days would still continue at Washington Urban. And this would allow us to focus that program more strongly too, because now we're not doing both groups at the same time. And so that's the hope. But it is an investment by this board in terms of we have to create some classroom space, and we have to create some personnel to supervise and engage those kids. And I'm just, want to appreciate Andrea for taking that on with honorary Dr. O'Mealy in this work. But the reality is that we will have some bumps in the road as we roll this out. We're aware of that, we're anticipating that. But like anything that's changed, it's always hard when you first start. And then once you start realizing why you do it, it starts to make more sense. And so this also, I think, allows us to address some of the feedback we hear from the community, about, hey, we're just throwing kids away, or hey, we're just suspending them, we don't care about them. So, and no one else doing this. No one else is doing this. I can tell you right now, no other community I'm aware of, large, big 5, small cities, or even suburban, are doing shifts like this around suspension and the code of character. So people were very happy that that legislation didn't pass, but if it does, we will be ahead of it. Yeah.
Andrea, in the beginning of your remarks, you indicated that we're gonna begin a 30-day review time period here. Would you remind people how they may input changes or suggestions or anything?
Yes, right on the website, there'll be a Let's Talk, and there'll be an interest area for the 23-24 Code of Character public comment period. Karen's got it ready to go up first thing tomorrow morning.
Yeah, and then she'll blast it on social media, we'll email it out to families, we'll do my brief, we'll do everything we've normally done to try to get the word out.
Just follow you.
I have a question. So, is it, if I heard correctly, is it the intended goal to somewhere in the future roll out the current CEO program that we have in the buildings in the district? Is that the current goal right now?
No, the approval was for 3 years.
Okay.
So we are entering year 2 of the 3 years, and then at the end of 3 years, we will bring that back to the board for consideration to continue the contract.
Okay. Just.
That has nothing to do with the code of character.
No, I just based on some
Yeah.
back and forth that I heard, I just wanted to get that clarified.
Yeah.
That's it.
Andrea, I did want to thank you because you gave us an opportunity, as you mentioned, superintendent, so but there were some that we had like 4 or 5 pages, so thank you, because I noticed that.
Very seriously, it was super helpful.
Yeah, well, thank you, because I noticed all the updates that you did, so appreciate it, much appreciated, thank you. We will now transition to our final presentation. The board has several committees that discuss specific topics in depth. One of these committees, which is required by law, is the policy committee, chaired by Priscilla, with Vice President Mahalani, Vivian, the superintendent, and the board clerk. Today, the policy committee will be joined by the board and Dr. Cotto's team, Ms. King, hi, Ms. King, who will present on the concussion management protocol and the athletic eligibility policy. This session will be considered the first read and will provide the board an opportunity to ask questions. Welcome.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President, thank you. Superintendent Solaire, members of the board. My name is Shannon King. I'm a certified athletic trainer, and I have been a certified athletic trainer for 8 years now. But I just started with the school district full-time back in September. And Mr. DiCaprio, Schenectady is definitely the place to be. So I just want to start out with that. Thank you for having me. I've been working really hard. Oh, it comes with clicker?
He's got you.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you. Okay. We've already gone over this, actually, we've seen this tonight. Next slide, please. I just wanted to say that the main pillar that we're going to be embodying with this concussion management protocol is the efficient systems and equitable resources for our student athletes. And this isn't going to apply just to the athletes, it's going to apply to the student body as a whole. There will be separate protocols for return to sport and return to exercise. So I've actually been teamed up with our nurse manager and with our district physician, Dr. Petrillo. He's approved everything that you're going to see here tonight. So we can go ahead and continue to the next slide, please. So just my role in concussion management, athletic trainers, we operate under the supervision of a physician, like I mentioned, and we can assist in identifying a student with a possible concussion. So the certified athletic trainer evaluates the student, brings them, gives them advice whether or not they need to see the physician or not, and then we help them go through the return to play progression, which is a gradual thing which we'll go over in a minute, and make sure they receive the appropriate post-concussion care. Next slide, please. This right now is our current concussion management policy. It was updated in 2019 in accordance with New York State law and several other governing bodies. I just wanted to point out to you that this is all the text that we have for managing concussion at this point in time. So the next slide is just a link, but all of you have in your folder the new policy that we have come up with, and we don't have to go over it in detail right now, it's very some time, but it has a detailed section on the concussion management team and all of the possible stakeholders involved. It continues on how to recognize the signs and symptoms of the concussion. Again, I'm going to be presenting this to all of our nursing staff and to all of our PE staff and all of our coaches, because they will be assisting me in overseeing all of the return to play. There's only one of me, and how many supposed we have? So the policy goes step by step, how the evaluation, the treatment, and then which step to go through return to learn, and the gradual return to exercise. And the references for this, which are listed on the next slide, are the New York State Concussion Management Awareness Act, the National Athletic Trainers Association position statement on the management of sport concussion. We often use the CDC heads up. All of our nurses have done the CDC heads up training. I have as well. They have separate trainings for PE teachers as well. And then the consensus statement on concussion in sport. Actually, they're coming up on they do this international conference every 10 years. So in the next couple of years, they're going to be doing another conference as well. And then the last thing was the New York State Education Department guidelines for the concussion management in schools. So those are all the resources that I referenced for the advised policy. So based on the policy, we didn't have any written protocol, and nothing in writing. It's the same standard protocol that everybody nationally follows, but we just didn't have it written down. So that's what is on the next slide, the link to that, and you guys also have a copy of that in all of your folders. Again, it goes through step by step what to do in the presence of the athletic trainer. So in that scenario, I'm going to be the primary provider, and I'm going to assess and evaluate. If I am not there, it also gives the step-by-step instructions on who to go through there. And then what deems it a red flag in an emergency, when we're going to call 911, whether or not we can wait till the next day, kind of thing like that. So everything is laid out, including, next slide please, the return to exercise and return to sport progression. They are slightly different, but they follow the same steps. We're just not going to put an average student through a more rigorous protocol, but they do have to gradually progress going back to PE class. And for an athlete, especially like a football player or a soccer player, someone who has contact, we need to make sure that they have a more gradual and more aggressive return to play, because they may feel fine just jogging around the track, but then when it comes to actually getting in the game and getting hit again, and getting their heart rate high enough, and the impact it could cause the symptoms to come back. So that's why we go through the gradual progression. And again, those are copied here on the slides, and you guys have a copy of both of those. One thing I did not list in the slide, but I did provide for you in the folder, is it's a checklist for the gradual return to play. It's in here somewhere. that is something that I'm gonna go over again with all of the nurses and all of our PE coaching staff. It is simply a way to document the fact that each student has gone through the correct steps and it can be signed off by any PE teacher, the one that's helping them through the protocol, or the coach, or myself. And then in the end, I will have a copy of it, and our nurses at each school, whichever school, will have a copy of that as well. And that's what I have for you. Any questions for me?
Yes.
I'm pretty familiar with attending college games, and I know that the athletic trainer is there for football, hockey, soccer largely. What sports are we planning to have your attendance? Maybe you're the only one at this point, and other people are training, but what sports do you primarily cover? Obviously, some have more risk
All
of
of them.
concussion than others.
All of them.
You can't possibly cover all boys and all girls.
All of the home events, if it is taking place on the Schenectady High School campus, then it is priority. If it is contact sport, then it's a priority, and then varsity sports take priority. So if there was
What was the last one?
varsity sports.
Varsity.
So if a freshman level game was going on at the same time as a varsity sport, I will be at the varsity sport. Unless, it gets tricky unless there's a freshman or modified football game, then that's contact, and that is always the top of my priority. Generally, we don't have those conflicts, we tend to schedule it pretty well, so the JV will be on a separate night from varsity, or JV will be at the away school, and then varsity will be home.
So you would provide services for the opposing teams at the same time, or if there should be a need, and they would do that likewise if our students are traveling to all of the other schools?
Correct, and actually recently, all of the athletic trainers in our league, in the council, we just met and we kind of are all making sure we're on the same page about everything. So we do provide care for each other's athletes. If they did not provide an athletic training, usually for football games, we will travel. That's the only sport that I will go to away games because it's such high risk.
Okay.
And Shannon does not work from like 8 a.m. to 8 at night. She does have a different schedule as a result of that.
Yes.
I understood.
She doesn't necessarily, she's not there from like 8 in the morning until 8 at night. She has a modified schedule to accommodate the fact that she's more PM.
Well, I haven't seen much football at 8 a.m.
Well, no, but she does do some, so like,
No, you gotta do all the paperwork.
yeah, but she does do stuff in the weight room here, and there's some, so I just want, there is a daytime component to her work as well.
Vice President Mahalan. So I attempted to use the links, but I couldn't get in, so I requested access. But I believe these are the two links, right? This is like the
Correct,
polls?
yes.
Okay, and then this is,
The first link is going to be to the policy, which is that one, the other one.
oh, this one.
And that's the policy, and then this will be the protocol that we will follow.
Oh, okay, okay, this is the protocol.
Yeah, the one on the left is the policy.
Okay. And that's to replace this guy?
Yes.
Okay, okay, and then how, I mean, so I'm just trying to understand, this is like the first read, so I think typically as a policy committee, we read through the stuff, so are we doing that right? Okay.
No, so we wanted to expose you, give you a little high-level presentation,
Okay.
give you the text and the language. You obviously take it, it'll go for a second read, those of you on the committee. Obviously, you can tell will be leading the committee, but yourself. And then after the July 5th reorg, we will have the new committee, and we'll bring this back to the committee, and then bring it hopefully back to the board as the final read. So we don't have to kind of delay this, because football starts in
August 19th.
August 19th, yeah, so we want to try to have this in place prior to August 19th. So that's why we kind of asked to jump in tonight for first.
So it's homework.
So it's homework for, really for committee members, for sure, but other board members, if you have any feedback, because it will come back to the whole board as either the second read, and then at that point, it's usually an adoption. So that's all.
Yeah, I do have a quick question. So the protocol, the concussion management protocol, should that be included in the policy?
It's mentioned in the policy, yeah, it's referenced there, and so the protocol, like I said, it's just the treatment plan that we will follow. It hadn't been in writing before.
Okay.
So I just wanted to have some, a hard copy of that.
Yeah, think of it as like a policy and then a regulation, and the protocol will be kind of what we follow to do the policy.
Okay.
So we will attach it, as as a document, so that it is memorialized,
Yeah.
so it'll say, but it'll be more like the regulation
Okay,
versus the policy.
thank you.
Passed.
You're good, yeah, pass. Thank you, sorry, I don't normally sit still for this long, I'm usually running up and down the field, so thank you guys again.
Thanks for all you do for the
Yeah.
kids. The next policy will be Dr. Cotto presenting on the athletic eligibility policy. We did mention this prior to the board, and now we want to share it with all as you know, again, high level description of what we are planning to do, and then obviously bring this to the policy committee for hopefully a second read, and then bring it to the board for adoption. Carlos?
So yes, as shared, this is the participation in student interscholastic sports. This is the first read. Mr. Glasgow, being a father, had a little one, had a moving up ceremony today, and then he's got his middle schooler moving up tomorrow. So I'm taking his place and at least sharing the information as it relates to the policy as we look to kind of go through that first read. Next slide. Oh, that's not the right. So I know you have the PowerPoint in front of you. I want to kind of go off of what I have here. I think that's a different one there. Vision, I mean, as we talk about us, the vision, the tagline, and the values, this is all aligned to this particular work and the support that we need to provide in order to prepare our students to graduate on time and then to pursue college and career opportunities. As we go into our pillars, I would share that this overall policy is aligned to all four of the pillars. When we look at student and graduate success, the goal here is really to provide a level of support, but also accountability, not just for our students, but also our coaches and our staff, so that they wrap around. And the one thing that I share is if you don't hit the books, you don't get the looks. And many of our athletes, their dreams and goals, no different than mine at that age, is to play at the next level. So in order to do that, we want to make sure that we prepare them and that as they transition from one grade to the other, they have that access and opportunity. And you'd be surprised, I mean, getting those grades and being an okay athlete still provides you with those opportunities. So it's important for us to lay that foundation. You know, if sports are done right, this is no different than we can speak of arts, and you know, when you engage and connect students with the things in which they have interest, and you make sure that you anchor it to what our goal is, teaching and learning, and making sure that students are prepared, then the goal here is that every child that's participating in the sports program is going to graduate on time and is going to pursue college and career opportunities. So although, as I kind of shares what our kind of outcomes are, what we're looking for, the goal there is not necessarily to have it it's not a punitive piece, it's kind of how do we work together to support children and figure out why. You know, if it's attendance, then why aren't they coming to school? If they're coming to school and they're not doing well in the classroom, then how do we provide that children's support to anchor that? Passionate people are coaches. I mean, our coaches are some of the most passionate individuals that commit not only during their practices, but some of them are running programs even as we speak, summer, weekends. So it's supporting them as well and letting them know that they're going to have additional supports within the structure of a school. The partnerships with family and community, the goal here is it doesn't only happen in school. So many of our athletes are also connected to youth organizations or previously connected to youth organizations. So how do we work with those youth coaches to have them understand or at least learn more about what triggers a young man or a young lady in reference to sports, but also what are some things and some influential individuals in the community that have kind of kept some of our students in line, and how do we bring them into the conversation so that we can support them. And then efficient systems. And at the end of the day, if we're able to work through this collectively, then we'll be able to really create a web of support for our student athletes that they can't fall through. The more individuals that have, and many of them already have multiple hands that have been supporting them in their journey. So it's really connecting with all of those individuals in this work. Next one. So the role of the athletic director, you know, so Edgar will be responsible for this overall piece. If indeed he's not available, it'll be my responsibility to designate someone to support this work. But this is a collective piece. Although here it says at 12 p.m. we'll make a decision, that decision is not being made that day. There's constant work that'll be taking place throughout the course of a week, making sure that we're troubleshooting and working with teachers, we're working with building administration, and figuring out why Carlos hasn't been in class. But ultimately, holding that child accountable and kind of having them understand, you know, you've been to 3 lunch periods, you know, you gotta be in the classroom, you gotta kind of hold you accountable in reference to what it is that
Hold
you
on. You got the wrong slide. That's the concussion one? It's the second, if you go back to the board doc, it's the... Oh yeah, that you actually have the policy up there, you don't have the slide back, just FYI. So never mind.
I don't know which one.
You can leave it on the front slide, that one, but the board members, you have the right one in your, you have the right one printed out in your folder.
So any of our students looking to participate in sport, there's certain things that are required by commission or regulations. So every child has to be registered into 3 courses as well as physical education. So as we move forward, we're going to make sure that those courses are aligned because that makes them what they call a bona fide student athlete. A child that's not enrolled in 3 courses along with phys ed is technically an ineligible athlete. So that's something that as we continue to do this work, that we'll make sure that that's in place. Our goal is phys ed is a really strong component to the to the sports program. So second semester, we're going to revisit and make sure that students are participating in physical education and passing that particular class because it does complement and support the work as it relates to those students preparing and being ready.
I just emailed it to you.
Maintaining, at least 85% attendance. So those are some of the things that we'll kind of assess from day to day and week to week. And again, it's not making that decision at the end of a week, but it's also working with the coaches and teachers and the administration to kind of get a sense on why Carlos isn't coming to class.
Carlos is catch him up.
Okay, so next slide. Wait. So I know Mr. O'Malley spoke of having 5 credits at the end of your freshman year. The goal here is that we want to kind of assess year to year and kind of going back to what it takes to become a Division I, II, or III athlete in college. We're looking at a 4.5 as we close out a particular year, assessing it as we close out the year, and then working to figure out how we create a contract or support that child and making them understand that in order for them to pursue the dreams and goals that they have, that's something that they're going to want to have in place. And with that, we provide that academic support as well and some tutoring components, working with building leadership as well as staff in determining how we go about really being intentional around the supports that a child may need as it relates to academics. But if it's outside of academics and it's more community, then it's leveraging the partners that we have within our community to really support the students that are struggling outside of the learner. As it relates to the overall behavior, things that might happen throughout, if a child is suspended, the child cannot participate in sports if they're suspended multiple times throughout the course of the season, then we're looking to recalibrate that individual and kind of get a sense of what it is that we need to do to support and why are these kind of behaviors taking place in reference to school. But again, it's not punitive as much as it is just trying to get a better sense of why it is that Carlos is making the choices that he's making within the building. Then ultimately, this information will be shared with our student athletes, it will be shared with our coaches, and we'll continue to kind of work through it throughout the course of the summer, and then planning to bring it into implementation for the fall season. Any questions?
Last slide.
Any questions for?
Why Carlos? Just why Carlos?
Why Carlos?
It was only Carlos. There was nobody else but Carlos.
Using myself as an example. Yes.
Any questions to my left from board members?
I did.
We're going to start with the focus.
I think so. So we're just building in,
This is the policy where
that is, okay.
we recommend.
And we can compare that to one.
There is no, yeah, so just to give, there is no current athletic eligibility policy for Schenectady. There's nothing on file, so we are recommending the one here, but there's nothing to compare it to. So just obviously take a look at the language. Obviously, many of you are parents, former parents in the district. Take the lens of what a parent, give us feedback, things you would like to see. We will bring this to the smaller policy committee, but this is a first-time policy for us as a district, so it's a big deal.
Is there any, are there any other bordering districts with similar policies, or is?
Yes, we have looked at other districts. I come from Rochester, so we had a policy where it had like certain checkpoints throughout the. Some don't have. Some might just kind of go with passing classes. Some have GPAs that are attached to them. Some have higher attendance attached to them. I think the goal here is starting here and building upon it, but ultimately it's really just anchoring the overall support. So we have looked at a couple Edgar comes from a district and he had one there as well, so we've done some.
Newburgh.
Newburgh.
So I think, the other neighboring districts do have them, some don't. You know, this is really a first time for us. You know, we wanted to put some, if a kid is really a great athlete, we don't want to necessarily harm them. We also want to make sure they're also a student first. And so if they're a student athlete, like the nomenclature says, then we want to make sure we can defend that. And, you know, the goal is that you hopefully use sports to open doors for them beyond. And so I couldn't, the last 2 years, tell you with confidence that if a kid was really great football, basketball, swimmer, wrestler, but they also were a good student. And I couldn't do that confidently, so that concerned me. So I went to Carlos, I'm like, we gotta do something about this. And, you know, you talk to Principal Green, he'll tell you the same thing. He needs something too to help him. You know, sometimes you may see a kid in the hallway a little too often and say, look, if you don't get in the class, and you're not gonna be eligible to play. And so sometimes that matters. And I know Priscilla's son was a star player as well, and I'm sure this, you were the eligibility policy at home, but we want to make sure we have something in the school system as well. So.
Yeah, both of my sons, just
Yeah. I heard about Prince. I didn't hear about that.
But I guess my only concern would be the prior suspensions before they got to a team, because sometimes being on a team engages them in
I mean, this is the initial. I think the goal is to work with Mr. Green and work with the team. Because at the end of the day, we want to really dive a little deeper into why, you know, this individual has this particular consequence or this outcome, so that we're more intentional to that and providing that level of support. This is not only for, you know, right now we're looking at athletics, but performing arts, I mean, it will be something that will support all. Daryl Redmond is working on that particular piece, but it's going to be aligned with this as well. To support, you know, to support all. And, you know, it's something that I'll be sharing with the community as well. So our youth coaches, the expectation is, you know, as we continue to partner, you know, we provided access for programs that are, you know, have free access to our facilities when they're supporting over 80% of our students. So this is the kind of, okay, we're providing you this, but how do we work together to make sure that if Carlos is going to practice and he's out here at Belmont every day, but he's not coming to school, then I want to talk to Kent and find out, can you help me? Because I need Carlos back in the building.
Carlos is in trouble.
Yeah. I mean, and there's a lot of examples to this work. I mean, I ran athletics in my previous district, and every athlete has a dream. And this is the opportunity to really make sure that that dream can be fulfilled. And if they're shooting for the stars and land on the moon, the last thing that they have is a bachelor's degree because they went on to college, which is what happened to me. You know, you shoot for the stars and you land on the moon.
Carlos was a basketball player.
Yeah, 5 assistants.
Well, I think this is good because I guess it was all subjective before, if there was no.
Well, we didn't have anything, so we couldn't even definitively, if a parent would say, we told them they couldn't, they would like, well, what is possible?
Right.
What's the rule? So, you know, I think this will give us a little bit, for both sides, hold our coaches in, you know, we did meet with our coaches and talk about how we want to elevate our programs, and we need to be more engaged, and some of them are like really happy that they want to see their kids' grade, they want to sit with them, they want to figure out what's going on. And I want to be clear, we're not trying to cancel anybody. This will have to require support to be put in place. So if a kid falls below or hits this threshold where they could be potentially ineligible, they don't get kicked off the team. They have to either go to tutoring, there has to be a plan developed, there is more responsibility. They aren't off the team. They may not be able to practice, well, practice is one thing, but they may not be able to play a game. They have to sit out while they become potentially eligible, but the goal is they're still on the team, they still can practice with the team, you know, those types of things so we don't want to say to kids like, oh, you're ineligible, you're off the team. The goal is the responsibility as a coach, Edgar, the principal, how do we get these kids back in? And some of it may require us creating academic tutoring for them, you know, after school tutoring, maybe they'd be required to go to an hour, meet with their teacher before they come to practice, and that's part of the contract. We've talked about potentially a runaround sheet where we would have sign off that says they're doing the things that they're doing. You know, the kid would own part of that responsibility. I mean, that's an old school model, right? Runaround sheet. So I just want to be clear, this isn't to be, the goal here is if you meet this pressure, you're off the team. No, the goal is like, okay, how do we get you back on? What's the plan to get you back on and to save you?
Paige, our
slide 4 is the one that discusses the 4.5 credits or units of study and so on, Carlos, and I noticed the years in there are reviewing the student's academic progress for the 23-24 year and developing the contract for 24-25. So what are we planning to do here for 23-24 in terms of the eligibility coming up this fall? Because that seems to be at 2 years out, or is that an error?
Yeah, so I think we're gonna assess throughout this year as we implement this particular policy, and then at the end of the year, we'll assess where students are as it relates to their academic. The goal is that we have all of our students, because of this work, working to attain the 4.5. And if we don't, then it's working through the summer to then have a plan, a contract or a plan in place for that child so that they can get to where they need to be on the academic.
Yeah, 4.5, we won't know at the end of the year.
Well, right, but what are we doing for fall of 23 here? I mean, do we have any eligibility requirements for fall of 23 that we can do?
The 85% attendance and
Yeah,
the
this is up here,
citizenship.
the upper part.
Okay.
Look at this policy here.
Yeah, I'm on the page
Okay.
slide 4 here, yeah.
If you look at this on the written one, this part would be for 23, 24. The bottom part will happen at the end of the year. We'll assess how many kids did there in 4.5 credits and figure out,
Well, that would be like this time next year.
correct.
For the full,
So what I'm asking is what's happening for 23, the fall of 23?
so right now, we're assessing where students are academically going into this fall season. The
Okay.
fall is always a little more complicated just because it's a short season, and when we get a lot of the grades that students receive in with summer school kind of create. So we'll assess that throughout the year and provide the supports that are needed to make sure that the majority, if not all of our students, as we close out the year, are on track to kind of meet that overall, and if not, but I think it's all about attendance, it's all about the citizenship piece, and then the overall academic kind of growth that's taking place.
Is there a sample contract in here that, in terms of what they would be agreeing to, or that we would be using at this time next year?
I can provide that. I mean, we don't have a sample as of right now.
Yeah, I
but we
just
can-
was wondering.
Because all of the students will also be rostered in Infinite Campus, so all of our coaches are gonna have access to kind of how our athletes are moving throughout the week. They can have access to the attendance and also other things that are popular within the Infinite.
And I just wonder, have we checked the schedules? There won't be no prom conflicts with,
We've talked about that,
Section
yes.
2 playoffs that we're going to be participating in.
Yeah, no, we'll look at all those, and I think the tutoring piece, because of the master schedule that Ed is working on, we'll have opportunities, because not all programs can start right after school, so we'll start embedding some of that tutoring component with our coaches to support students as they're waiting to start practice.
Board Member Jamaica?
Really happy that a support plan is part of this, right? We're not just saying, if you don't, then buy. It's, if you don't, here's how we help you to get to where you need to be. What does this mean for 8th graders going into 9th grade, right? And I say this as a parent whose kid was, captain of the varsity team. So, when we were going from 8th grade to 9th grade, we knew we were JV just for 1 year and then we were straight varsity. So kids coming from middle school could be going varsity. Going to JV. Varsity is a lot harder. But going to JV, what, is it just the attendance at that point?
So right now, we'll look at grades, as they transition from middle school to high school. We'll look at attendance and just a trend on where students have been, to then work with coaches, work with administration, to really start to put plans in place. I think the big thing here is really creating that wraparound support for our athletes, where that wasn't in place yet. Some coaches, will seek to get that information. And again, I won't speak to Schenectady, but, I had coaches that would see their athletes in the cafeteria all day and then have them out there practicing as well as starting in games, and that sends the wrong message. So I think right now it's looking at those 3 areas: it's attendance, it's citizenship, and it's overall kind of where they are academically, and then working collectively to just see how we have them truly understand that, again, if their dream is to play at that next level, then it starts in 9th grade. You got to get those credits in, and you want to make sure that you have a progression to those credits so that when you're a senior, now you're able to reach out to colleges and kind of have them reach out to you because they see that you.
And that it wouldn't just be athletics, but we're trying to create some parallels with other extracurricular, like band and orchestra and stuff like that.
But right now, to answer your question, the 8th grader would still be fully eligible to participate? But we would take a look back at what the child may have done or didn't do, and just so we have an idea of what we think to expect them on support. But they would be eligible to practice, they would be eligible to play, because they really don't have a baseline, they haven't earned any credits per
Right,
se.
right, 'cause
And-
when I saw that, I'm like, there's
Yeah,
credits,
yeah.
unless they have earned credits.
Unless they have, and according to Tyrone, that's his plan.
How does this work with a child that has an IEP?
Again, we provide those supports, so it's being intentional around what that child needs and making sure that we're providing those supports throughout.
And I guess I'm thinking of, like, worst case scenarios, right? Our children who have IEPs or disabilities are treated differently when it comes to suspensions and things like that. Will there be language that is able to, you know, spell that out so that it's clear, the way that we do in other documents? And when it comes to suspensions, any suspension, like the way I read it, it was any suspension, right? That if it's a 1-day suspension or a 20-day suspension, that it was just any suspension is this black mark. And to that point, a double punishment, because you cannot practice and you cannot play while you're on suspension. And then when you come back, you miss at least 1 game. So we're punishing the kid.
Well, no, they would miss it throughout the course of that suspension.
That I hope I read it wrong because you'll find it out.
You're right, it says about,
Yeah.
students
Okay.
suspended either in school or out of school, student must sit out at least 1 game. So double consequence.
Right. We can
Yeah,
fix
and
it.
that's why we want you guys to read it, because there's things that we know you're gonna see, or.
I was looking forward to reading this.
Yeah. So I think what I want, I don't wanna spend too much time on
No.
this, was that this is the first, we're presenting it, give you a general idea. There's even things here, we did not put in here that we talked about, and that was a GPA. And so we did not put that in here, but we've talked about a 2.0. We did not, to more to Kathy's point, like what is the criteria coming into the fall? Like you must have a 2.0 GPA. Right now, we've really centered it around citizenship, attendance, because we know that isn't usually a direct indicator of student performance. But if the board wants us to put a specific GPA requirement, we would like to hear that from the board. So just know that there's a lot of certain things that we did not put in here to see what the feedback will be, and we wanted to take it from more a citizenship, attendance type of behavioral support kind of plan. You know, if a kid had all these, they technically would still be eligible, but they probably would have tutoring, or they probably would have some kind of support. If a kid had all these in a typical 2.0 model, he would be ineligible, because he'd have a 1.0 GPA, and he couldn't participate. So that's why we didn't put some of that, but if the board thinks that may be more tangible or more easily defined.
I love that it's an opportunity. I love that it's an opportunity to flag students in need, right? And get them the support services, that this is another level for us to look at kids through that lens and be like, oh, what's going on with Carlos? What supports can we give Carlos so that Carlos is doing all the things that Carlos needs to do?
And the majority of the weight is through PE. If you notice, physical education class is mentioned specifically because we sometimes are baffled that we have athletes that don't participate in PE. And so we want to make sure that that should not happen. Shannon laughed, but she's seen it.
I do understand.
Yeah. You can, come on up, you see it every day.
No, I do see this every day, and actually I've talked to Edgar about this a lot. So the main thing that we really, is the attendance piece. And like you mentioned, the students with the IEPs. So if you're going to class and your grades are still you're going to class, you're putting in that effort, right? So that's what we want to look at, right? Versus if your grades suck because you're sitting in class, right? So that's like the main piece that Edgar had really wanted to roll out in the beginning, and that's what Carlos was saying. This year we're gonna kind of evaluate this, and I'm really invested in this because I am there during part of the school day, and I have my door open. Any student athlete is welcome to come in.
Just not when they have class.
Just not when they have class. Right, so I gotta kick them out and get them back to class. So and the class that they skip most often and come see me is PE. So that's why I said I'm invested in this attendance part, because I want to see these kids play, because I know how important it is. Like to have that structure, to have that program, to have the sports, to have that team, that camaraderie that's gonna correlate to the rest of their life. So, okay, I just wanted to add that piece, thank you.
I just have one question. I'm wondering, because you did mention that it's going to be shared with different stakeholders, but I'm wondering, how is it going to be shared with our students before, this is rolled out? And how is that going to be done so it's consistently throughout the district? And I'm wondering if the counselors would be part of this, and also, would that conversation also start in 8th grade?
So I mean, the goal is to deliver this in the 8th grade as we
Okay.
continue to move forward. There's a piece that we'll do called the NCAA, like I've done a thing called the Journey of a Scholar Athlete, where we're gonna go into our middle schools and start to share what it really takes to be a Division I, Division II, Division III. So there's some criteria. 2.3 is the minimum GPA that you need to even be in that portal. So the goal is that we start to educate at the middle school prior to them transitioning. But we're looking to do that, I say we, because Edgar will be part of this, start to have these presentations also with our youth program so that they have a better sense, because we're going to need their support. But absolutely, Andrea's department is going to play a key role, and Dr. DeVries will be part of those conversations and probably part of the presentations that we would provide to the community. The athletic director is going to share this with the coaches will share with the athletes, and it's a slow process. I mean, I think it's an educational piece where we're just trying to close the gap, because right now we haven't really been providing that level of information and really work with the athlete. Because I think no different than an athlete, if you're an arts person or a music person, when we are able to, if we do this right, then things will shift in the direction that they need to, because I was a product of that. I mean, at the end of the day, taking advantage of what was taking place after school was what, in some cases got me to school. So that's what brings many of our children into the building, but sometimes they're coming in right at the end of the day. So now with Infinite Campus, we're going to be able to track and say, wait a minute, and then even with middle schools and elementary schools, we're going to start to have those conversations with our youth coaches as well, just to see how we can really re-engage and kind of build this web so that our students don't fall through. I don't know if I answered all of them, but okay.
I do have one question, I apologize. Super quick, so for attendance, the minimum 85% attendance, and if you don't qualify, and you aren't able to participate in the game, I believe it says here that you still have to attend the game the day of the competition. Does that also apply to practices?
So those are the things that I left feedback from the group as a whole. At this point, even at 85, I mean, it all depends on going back and also working with building leadership and kind of getting a better sense. So we don't necessarily want to just go with that percentage and then not dig a little deeper to find out. And then it's that commitment, because I think it could mean where that child is now going to tutoring during practice, because that's the time that works best for them. So we'll create a plan that's gonna keep them engaged in program, but it might be the right time during program to say, okay, let's have you get this support that you need as it relates to the academic end, or try to find some interventions around why is it that Carlos isn't coming to school.
Of course, I mean, if it was a situation where it was really just the attendance piece, but their grades may not be that horrible, but they're still not attending school at minimally as they should, would you consider still requiring that student to attend practice, maybe not participate in practice, but still attend, because you still have a commitment to the team that you signed up for?
We would. And then we'll work with the child to figure out what their needs would be, and if we can provide those needs, whether it's during that time or after or before, or work with the building to see if it's something that we can do during the school day as well.
And one other question, so to piggyback off of what Bernice had said, or had asked you, giving the policy, the contract to 8th graders before going into the 9th grade, I'm also wondering, is this going to be provided before the beginning of the school year, or before enrollment into any fall or winter programs as well, both to the student and to the parent, so they're fully aware of the expectations before an issue arises?
Yes. So I mean, the goal is once it's approved by board, then we'll start to roll it out. And then every coach is responsible to do a coaching meeting prior to with families, and we'll probably have Edgar just do a family one for the entire program as a whole. But coaches will then meet with their athletes and then also meet with their parents.
And schools typically have like a student handbook, these things will be included so parents can look at it, but, we know there's gonna be a major communication plan around this. But I think where I want the board's input is, what do you think is reasonable in terms of expecting from a student athlete? We try to go with just a general framework around attendance, really I mean, the only class, it says they must be passing physical education. Like, you know, like, we put that in there on purpose. So those, some of that stuff is intentional because we see that as like a really important class. It's a gateway class for student athletes. So the attendance piece, I think there'll be some flexibility on that easily, but I think the more important piece is if you feel like we're missing something, we'd love to hear from the board. You know, many of you were former athletes, you have children that were athletes. Go home, talk to your child. What do you think is fair to be eligible? What do you think people need? Some people believe in the tough love concept. Some people believe in who cares, let them play because that's the only thing they come to school for. No, there's a large continuum here. We want to get somewhere where it's fair for us to enforce some level of expectation around student athletes.
Thank you, Dr.
Well, thank you.
The next order of business are the consent agenda items. The consent agenda items includes items that are approved by consent and were previously sent to the board for review. However, single items can be considered separately and taken off the consent agenda by a single member if they wish to do so. Would anyone like a consent agenda item removed? Hearing none?
Yeah, just real quick, there's a correction, Kathy, Board Member Lewis had mentioned, page 4 of the non-certificated agenda resolutions, is the name listed twice, Amanda LeVere is listed twice, and we'd like to remove the second one, the engagement specialist, and go with the first one, tech engagement specialist. So just want to make that one clear, we'll delete that if the board is supportive.
I have another one, the BOE meeting schedule. Do you want me to discuss the item now or just, or pull it?
Pull it, discuss it, separate.
Separate or? Okay.
So I need a resolution to pull it.
And I had another question regarding the bond resolution when I don't know the answer to that. Regarding whether it needs to be a roll call vote as indicated in the resolution.
Just needs consensus, I think. Doesn't have to be roll call.
Well, yeah, it says roll call in there, that's why.
It says roll call and it shows, I think we all sign it individually.
Yeah, you're right, it's roll call. So we should pull a resolution to discuss the board agenda calendar and resolution to pull the bond resolution separately for roll call. And then the one correction.
And then do we?
And you have to make a motion. So you need a motion to approve pulling the.
Yep. Okay, so I'll accept a motion to pull the resolution, the calendar resolution,
For further discussion.
for further discussion. Motion? Thank you. Lonnie, second? Kathy? Kathy, thank you. All in, yeah, I can't see it. Yeah, that's all right. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. I will also accept a motion to pull the bond resolution for further discussion. Motion? Kathy, second? Second. Erica? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. So we'll start with the calendar resolution.
Yes, I'm looking at the calendar and there are two things here. I was wondering if we decided to meet here all the time and never at the high school.
Yeah, so this has typically been where the board needs to be, and the discussion would be, we would just identify for anything special. If we're doing like a 10-year celebration, we would go back to the high school. But typically, this has been, from my understanding, according to the district clerk, typically where most meetings would have occurred, and then you go to the high school. And I think the pandemic kind of changed that a little bit.
We alternated.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, we used to alternate.
Alternate between them.
The thing that was discussed is, as I love that this space was created for these meetings, right? It's got all the techie stuff. I personally like the splitting of time. Like work sessions here are great, especially with presentations and stuff, but we've done a really great job of being at the high school, and it offers a lot more space.
Sure.
For folks in the attendance.
What do others think?
With doing it at the high school, and I guess Mr. Green can answer this too, does it ever put a burden on things happening there, like in the auditorium, especially with theater productions? with having
Yes.
working in chairs, that's what I was thinking.
Sometimes it does, yes.
But I feel like here we don't impose on anything happening over there.
So we can be mindful of, right,
Anything changes.
yeah.
And part of it was to balance out the size of the city, the size of the city. I mean, that is what it was, that was the
Yeah, listen, that's you guys' calendar, you guys' meeting, we will do as needed by the board, so.
And the other class?
we can modify it. I mean, I don't think this is coming down on the tablets, so.
And it's also not about the dates, right? We're
No,
talking
it's not.
But I wanted to
Yeah,
ask,
it's just
there's
about
one date
education.
I want to question here.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, the May 16th date, 2024, looks to be incorrect to me, because the 15th would be a Wednesday, but the election can't happen till the 21st. And so I don't think that May 16th date is right. I think it's the 21st, and then we have our board meeting on the 22nd.
Yeah, I think, when I spoke to Martha about it, she says that there's a regulation that has to be, the budget has to be accepted by the 16th. She mentioned that specific date for the budget adoption.
But I don't, I mean, I think voting has always been the third Tuesday
Yeah,
of May.
it's always Tuesday.
And so I think it would be the 21st. All the years I've been here, I can't tell you, it must have been the 21st at some point, I think, but that's consistent, pretty much consistent across the state, the date, is what I'm thinking, so. And May 16th would be a Thursday, and I think that would be terribly unusual.
Yeah.
I think maybe she's looking at this year's.
This year it was the 16th this year.
We'll circle back to that.
Okay, that was what I wanted to
Terry, are you able to look that up?
call attention,
Okay.
call attention to that, and the only other just past practice, the January 3rd is so early in the year, right after the 2-week or week and a half holiday or whatever we would normally have, in terms of agenda planning and so on. We've sometimes moved to that second week in January, or, it will be dependent on how you want to work it, but, so that you're not trying to do it that last week in December, when a lot of people are off.
What day is it for January? The day.
January 3rd is listed as the first meeting of January, so.
Which is the Wednesday, okay.
Yeah, so we've sometimes gone to the 10th or, just so you're back on the 24th or something.
So you're recommending the date change from the 10th and the 24th versus the
Possible.
3rd and the 17th?
Yeah, because you've got a gap there then between the 17th and the 7th. You've got all 3 weeks in there, so it's just a thought, and to ease the burden of how you would prepare the stuff prior to the holiday, or all through the holidays.
It should be the 15th of May.
Is May 15th?
Yeah, first, 8th, 15th, or 13th.
No, it can't be because it's,
That's this year.
the first is a
16th.
Wednesday. The first is a Wednesday.
Oh, she had the first time.
Yeah, she doesn't get it. It's the 6th, 13th, and 20th, that's what you're saying, it's gotta be 21st. So that's right.
Superintendent, so will the calendar come back to us in July?
Well, I guess, 2 questions. One is we have to determine our reorg meeting, so, I guess would there be a motion to, approve the calendar with the changes to May to be reflective of the 21st?
For the budget.
The budget, and changing January to the 10th and the 24th. I think if the board supports the budget with those changes, supports the calendar, makes a recommendation to support the calendar with those changes, we can, when we publish the final version, we can make that correction.
So what was the January change?
January, the issue with January was that we come back from school on the 2nd, and there's break the week before, so it would just be tough to do the agenda planning when folks are probably out. So it'll be the 10th and the 24th versus the 3rd and the 17th.
I was just looking to make sure it wasn't like back to back in January, February.
No, it was, it would still be rated, yeah.
There's something else that just occurred to me on this.
So the location piece we can leave alone, right here and there, and then, but try to rotate where we could, go to high school for 2 parts of the city,
Right,
okay?
and make sure it's updated on.
And make sure it's a date that doesn't interfere with high school. We're not gonna be like, we're gonna take all these
No,
ones.
we're gonna call Depeche. We're gonna call Depeche.
No, we'll get some more. And then the board wants the date changed to the 21st for the May, for the budget adoption, for the vote, and then January 10th and 24th for January. Other than that, no other changes?
What is the week of, school break week in April? I didn't have time to look it up, I don't know when it falls.
April?
Yeah,
Give me 1 second.
because the 10th would be, if the 10th is, maybe it's the 3rd is a school break week, because we're the 10th and 24th, we're at the 2nd and the 4th in April, 2nd and 4th Wednesday. So maybe it's the 3rd, that where it has the 3rd in the child.
Yeah, so April break next year, April is the first week of April,
Okay,
the 1st through the 5th.
so that's why the 10th and the 24th there.
Correct, the 10th and the 24th are chosen.
So I'll accept the motion to approve the calendar.
With
as
the
amended,
following
with the-
changes.
Yeah, with the amendments. And that's May 21st and changing it from, to January 10th and January 24th. I'll accept the motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Kathy. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Vivian. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. And I'll accept the motion again to talk about the resolution bond.
Yeah, we just, the only reason why it was pulled out is to do a roll call vote, so you'll need to have every board member do a roll call, and then every board member will have to sign up.
So we'll start with the roll call to my left.
Yes.
Vivian?
Aye or yes?
That was good. Isaac?
Aye.
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 I think you're supposed to call names, but that's okay. You got it.
The motion carries.
We should have all went up and pitched that.
So just be mindful that the district clerk will try to contact you to come by and sign. We can try to print it out, Terry, tonight maybe, and have them sign it before they leave. Thanks.
Okay. So resolutions 6 through 9F, excluding the ones that we just amended, as itemized on the consent agenda are presented for approval. I'll accept a motion to approve these items. A motion?
So moved, Erica.
Thank you, Erica. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Nohala. Thank you, Vivian. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. We have a second opportunity for comments from the public or board members.
Actually, no, actually. So, do I need to do this?
Yes, for our live viewers.
So since I'm up here anyways, a point of personal privilege, Jamaica, it's amazing to have had another student of yours graduate this year. My second of Jamaica's children were in my different IB class this year, but amazing. Congratulations to you and your family. And Princella, on behalf of the SF team, thank you so much for your service over the years. We would be remiss without thanking you. We do want to appreciate you. Thank you.
I just have some additional comments, since the board has approved the consent agenda. I just want to point out Carolyn Manzella is in the audience. She's our new coordinator of student support services. She'll be joining the high school campus. Comes with a wealth of experience, high school principals, special education background, so we're really excited to see the work she can help us with. Hopefully approaching the relative risk ratio at the high school and helping us with our students with disabilities. So we're looking forward to that. We want to point that out. I also want to acknowledge, I think that's our Tracy. Yeah, Tracy Semino, president, along with Mike Silvestri for the paraprofessional unit. One thing we did really none of us knew, or I didn't know when I took the job here, was all of our agreements needed to be renegotiated. So, surprise, they didn't tell me that in the interview, but that's okay. But all 7 have now been renegotiated, and but the pairs was not necessarily the last in the sense of a negative way, but I think they were great partners in trying to come up with a fair contract for their members. I think the results in the voting supported that, 256, I think, to 11. And, you know, this will put them at a pay rate, it'll jump in the next couple of years, so please know that. And we can't do a lot of the work we do in this district without our paraprofessional unit, and so we are aware of that. They work with our most vulnerable students. They do a lot of things that many of us would not want to do. So I do want to recognize both of their leadership to helping us get this done. And so just thank you, Tracy and Mike.
Any further comments? So, an executive session is now called for the purpose of discussing medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation. I'll accept a motion to go into executive session. Motion? Thank you, Nohalani, and that was Kathy. Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion